Well, there is one more thing that I want to talk about, and I may make a separate video about this, I may not. I'm not sure if I've got enough material, but I post quite regularly on a site, a Facebook site called the Sheppey History page, and that Sheppey was where I was brought up. I wasn't born there, but I moved there at about the age of 1 year old, I think, because my grandfather, Charlie Goodman, spent his whole life in the Royal Navy, and it's due to him that I started off my adventurous lifestyle by semi-emulating him by joining the Merchant Marine when I left school, but that's a whole different story. But I'd been going through some of the old family photographs, and I found 3 really just killer photos of my mother as a young girl and my beloved grandmother. I love my maternal grandparents, I love them. But I could see stuff looking at my mother as a young girl that obviously I never knew, because, well, how would I know? Now, the first one I posted was taken on the beach, showing my grandma and the young girl that would become my mother. They were paddling in the sea, and this was taken when she was around about 16, I think, which would make it 1937. My maths is failing, but no, 1935. And I believe someone colorized it for me, so I'll show you that here. And then I showed a photo taken what I think is about 2 years later, when my mum is let's say 18 years old, and she always told me when she was an old lady that she loved dressing up as a young girl, and you can see the two of them walking down the promenade on Sheerness Beach, dressed up to the nines, as people did in those days. It was the 30s. It's a really stylish era. Go and watch a Fred Astaire movie, you know, and figure it out for yourself. And then the last one that I just posted this morning, actually, and I'm getting loads of feedback from it now from members of the Sheerness History page group, was taken of my mum when she was about 15, and she's sitting in a deck chair with a little dog, and if I didn't know, I wouldn't realize that she was even my mum. She looks so different. You know, she looks like a young girl, but she looks like a tomboy. She's got this kind of devilish, dangerous look in her face, and it's wonderful. I was completely transfixed by this photo. I mean, I'm getting quite a few comments about, oh, it's a lovely photo and this and that and that. And I'm saying to them, well, I'm sort of in my mid-70s now. It's a hell of a time to start to try to get to know your mother, which I never really did, I must be honest. I mean, my mother to me was always a very severe character who would never let me have anything I wanted because I was just a stupid little boy and wanted everything in the shops. And she was married to my father, whose earnings potential was very, very low. What you have to realize is these photos you see of her as a young girl, they were considerably better off than when I was around and she was married to my father, a stick-in-the-mud bus driver who only ever wanted to drive his bus and go down the Blacksmith's Arms to have a couple of beers. Not a good scene. But with this last photo of my mum taken in the deck chair, it's just crying out to me for a time machine, because I just want to go back and talk to her, you know, and say hello and just hear how she may have talked like a 15-year-old, not knowing who I am, obviously, like a 15-year-old, uncluttered, untarnished, not weighed down by all the weight of the world and its responsibilities that she would later endure, because that's the person that I knew more towards the end of her life. And my God, if anyone needed a time machine, I need it now. Now, the astute of you will notice that I'm dressed differently, and that's because this short video is going to be tacked on to the end of the video that I've currently been working on for over a week now. It's not going to be a long video, but there's a lot of stuff in it that I've never done before. But anyway, enough of that. We'll talk about that at another time. But on working on the editing, I found there's a shot, a narration that ought to go in the end of that video. So any excuse for a beer, I've come down to shoot it, plus do one other thing, which will be a separate clip. Anyway, I ended up talking about a beautiful photo that I found and had restored by a friend from the Sheppey history page, my old hometown. Beautiful photo of my mum when she was about 15 years old. And the upshot of it was that looking at that photo, I found an incredible connection to her, that stronger even than we had back in the 80s when I was a young man and kind of living together in a house. We were very close in those days, but nothing like this. It was really quite strange, and it made me worry a bit to start with, but I soon came to the conclusion that, don't worry folks, it wasn't sexual or anything like that. The upshot of it, I think, is that because she and I were so very closely related, pretty well as close as two people can be, mother and son, I felt some kind of a bond, and it must be that it was turning on the parental instinct, or the grandparental instinct, that I never even knew I had. So there's me, like, looking at my mum when she's 15, and it seems like now I'm her father or her grandfather. and obviously I wished that I could go back and talk to her and whatever. Obviously that's impossible, but many mathematicians are working on this now, and they do their sums, which are anything like the sums I did at school. Is once one is one, and 2 ones are 2, and 3 ones are 3. The square root of 9 is 3. 9 plus 4 is 13. That kind of stuff. That's mathematics. And then they use this mathematics, and then somehow or other come up with a groundbreaking theory that there are multiple universes, and in fact time travel may be possible. Well, I don't know what bloody maths they're using, but it's not the same as the stuff I was taught at school. So I wish I had a time machine so I could go back and visit my mom. Well, can you imagine what that could be like? Let's say they invented one tomorrow, and people started using it for things like that. Well, can you imagine what it would be like within a couple of generations, let's say 50 years, young boys and young girls would be expecting to get a visit from their as yet unborn children, who come back to them when they're, an old duffer like me. They would actually, expect to see that. Or if you were bullied at school, like I was in one of my schools, the perpetrator in this world could fondly expect, or with dread expect, the subject of his bullying to pay him a little visit when he's still only about 10 years old, and the bullied person is in his prime, age 30, when he comes back, and maybe he comes back with a couple of mates to beat the bloody bejesus out of this kid. Let's open up a whole possibility of things. You'd be terrified of someone just popping out of the ether at any time to come and compromise your life, wouldn't you? According to the maths, once one is one and all that, it's actually easier to travel into the future than it is the past. So an old duffer like me could, within maybe another 50, 75 years, to allow the time to go on, an old duffer like me could expect a visit from their parents as a young man or a young woman to come and tell me where I went wrong over all these intervening years, or maybe to apologise for being a bad parent. I don't know, but we can't do that. The mathematicians again say there will be physical universal laws in place to prevent this kind of mess up and this kind of paradox from ever happening. But if you just think about it for a bit, it must never be possible. It should not be allowed. Much as I'd love to go back and sneak a survival suit on board RMS Titanic and experience her last moments for myself, it's never going to happen. And as some physicist said, well, if time travel, it's Hawking, if time travel is ever going to be possible, we will be surrounded by time travelers, wouldn't we? To which someone else said, well, maybe we are. Maybe you just can't see them, or somehow or other they keep a very low profile. But all things to ponder. I love time travel movies, and this kind of paradox, this this kind of mother-son paradox was handled particularly well in the first of the Back to the Future movies, where whoever he was, the male lead, the young boy, he went back to try to stop his parents from meeting or whatever, and his mother as a young girl took a shine to him. That was skating on very thin ice, especially in those days, but it handled the paradoxes very, very well, better than any other time travel movie I've seen. But I love time travel movies. This was what I wanted to put on the end of my video, so it might be the second time I've said goodbye, but I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you again soon. Bye bye.